Despite the relentless fixtures, Liverpool are top once more, and they're top by 6 points, having played a game more than the teams directly behind them. Not only are they the leaders, they're also the league's top scorers. They've scored more goals than at this stage last season when they won the Premier League, of course. Meanwhile, Crystal Palace, well, they remain down in the bottom half of the Premier League table. A really horrible afternoon for them. They may well sit 12th on 18 points, which is not bad for them at this stage. However, it was a really, really difficult day, wasn't it? And we'll talk about just what it feels like to be on the receiving. Well, do you know what? It wasn't just the win. It was the way that Liverpool team came out in the second half, Steve. It tells you something when you're 3-0 up at half-time and you come out and score more goals in the second half.
Yeah, and there was no sitting back. There was no taking it easy. There was no resting of players. Liverpool were absolutely relentless. I thought Crystal Palace were awful in the second half, to be very honest. I don't know what Roy Hodgson said to them half-time or whether he punished them by sending them out early and into the second half, but they were terrible. But Liverpool were brilliant, absolutely brilliant today.
They scored with pretty much every shot on target today. They were ruthless.
They were ruthless, and some of the quality we see, we have great vantage point here. Some of the goals, like Glenn was saying in commentary, was outstanding. The movement, the passing. Macca's right, Crystal Palace did not turn up in the second half, you know, and I think there's some worrying signs for Roy. I think he was a bit, at the end, he didn't know what to think, you know, because his team were taken apart, but I think at times they were their own worst enemy. But for
the chasing pack, how ominous is that message for them?
Well, I think it's fairly ominous, isn't it? Because everybody knows the problems Liverpool have had. Everybody knows at times they've been vulnerable defensively. To score 7, to put 6 points between them and the rest of the pack when they're only, well, they've got 5 or 6 really good, outstanding players missing. We know that maybe some fringe players are missing, but we know the 2 centre defenders are missing, Thiago's missing. And the fact that they're still where they are now and scoring goals and looking strong, looking confident going into the busy Christmas periods, I think it's quite ominous for everybody else.
And look, we've seen teams on the receiving end of big defeats. Southampton springs to mind. It's all about a reaction, isn't it, from Roy and his players once they get Christmas out of the way?
It is, and Roy, looking around there, I think Gary Cahill hurt himself. You know, he's a massive player for Crystal Palace at the end. You know, that you've got to get them players and galvanise them for the Christmas period. Because what happens is over the Christmas period, there's so many games. If you have a defeat like that and you let it come into the next game and the next game, all of a sudden 4 or 5 games pass, you ain't got a win. You get sucked into the bottom, which is what Crystal Palace don't want. But from Liverpool's perspective, I think that was a marker down. You know, I think there's a pack and then there's Liverpool Football Club. I think they're just slightly ahead of everyone else. And I think to do that, with all the trouble they've had, injuries and that, shows great resilience and that they've got just a strong squad. OK,
let's get some instant reaction. Jordan Henderson is with Des Kelly. Des?
Very much.
Interesting stuff. His biggest ever win as Liverpool boss equalled today. These are their results. You can see they're unbeaten in the last 8. But that was an interesting interview because we've seen Jurgen bounce into those interviews before, big smile on his face. Today, it was almost a reminder of this stage last season when they just started to play everything down again.
Yeah, I thought Jordan Henderson's interview was exactly the same, and rightly so, because, funny enough, I didn't think it was Liverpool's best performance of the year, even though they won by 7. I thought the performance, for instance, against Wolves, against Leicester, I thought they were better 90-minute performances. They were more clinical and more ruthless today. So I think they've got every right not to get carried away because of course, they were inflicted 7 against Aston Villa, and they know how it feels. And it's important not to get carried away and take it at face value because we've got a game next week, and if they lose, they'll have egg on the faces. So it's nice just to keep your feet on the ground and keep ploughing forward.
Look, winning the Premier League is an amazing feat. Defending it is a lot more difficult. We've seen teams not do it on many occasions, and it almost feels like that playing it all down worked so well for them, didn't it, 12 months ago? It wouldn't be a surprise if we start to see that again.
No, and he's got reasons to play it down. You know, he's missing his 2 main centre halves. He's had injuries all over the place. So, you know, I think Jurgen has every right to play it down. Every other team round in strengthened. I think Jordan was spot on with his interview when he said, there was sloppy moments. And I'm glad he said it, because when it comes as the pundit saying it, it's almost like you're getting negative for negative. Yeah. In the first half, there was sloppy moments.
There was a lot of sloppy moments.
You know, we was watching here, Crystal Palace were getting in behind. That's what we highlighted before the game was happening. But then the second half, like, how clinical was the quality of the passing. In particular, I love the one where Salah's come in and just dropped that pass and Firmino's dinked the keeper. There was so many moments where... But that's when you've got quality players, even when you're a little bit below par. You know there's going to be moments that are going to dig you out and score your goals, but exceptional.
Well, I don't think we should stand here and talk about sloppy moments, having seen them win 7-0. So let's have a look at some not very sloppy moments. In fact, let's have a look at 7. not very sloppy moments, because they were, as has been said already more than once, ruthless today.
Yeah, and this is a lovely ball from Trent. They started the game really well, Liverpool. Kouyaté allowed Sadio Mane to turn too easily, especially early on in the game. You have to be more aggressive, you have to be touch tight. And then Minamino's free as a bird in the box. And it's a wonderful moment for him getting his first Liverpool goal. And then Liverpool just went from strength to strength really in this first half.
Yeah, and then, you know, this one, I love this pass from Firmino there, and then the sharpness on the turn. Mane's first goal in 9 there, just the turn, made the space, and then strike laces through the ball, nearly broke the net. And that was the story of the game, because it was just clinical moment after clinical moment. You know, here again, look at this touch there, and the outside of the boot.
To that top corner of the net. Brilliant goal.
And this one, this is my favourite, the bunch macker, when he just comes in Salah, and he just sucks in the centre half with a weighted pass. Firmino with a lovely touch and the ability on his weak foot to just dink it. You know, this guy was fantastic today. And this is Salah's goal. I mean, this Roy will be killing himself for this one, because, you know, out of all of the days and all of the goals to concede, a Salah header from a corner will just, you know, will break Roy's heart. And it was just one of them days. I think at that point we saw Roy having a little chuckle to himself when he knew the game was up. And what about this Macca?
Running out of superlatives, were we today?
I know.
I mean, this is Salah all over. I mean, the deflated Palace. They're out on their feet. They're not running anymore. You know, you can be critical of Van Arnold not closing them down, but what's the point? Let's just be joyous about Liverpool, how ruthless they were, how clinical they were, whatever you want to say. It was a real standout performance, standout second half performance, particularly for me, but a great 90 minutes all in all.
Which was your favourite goal? He's gone with Firmino. Jordan couldn't remember which was which.
I like Firmino's first goal because I thought that was the most difficult goal to actually score. There were so many facets to it from start to finish. Jordan's goal was nice. Mo's last one was nice, but I always found them more easier to score. Firmino had to do certain things to stick it in the back of the net.
And he did so much more than just score goals today. How good was he today, Firmino?
Do you know what he does? The way that they play, when it's the usual front three and Mane and Salah, he plays with his back to goal and he pins it and he brings players into play. He works tirelessly. He always makes the right decision. He's a threat in the air. He's such an important component for him. I mean, here you watch him, look, hunting in packs. I mean, I just love it when he gets the vision here where he just picks passes, like he brings everyone. He's the catalyst for me that brings it all together.
I mean, it's incredible the fact that he was not criticised, that's the wrong type of word, but certainly questioned in his ability and whether he should be in the Liverpool 11. Yes, Diogo Jota came in and had a blistering start to his career at Liverpool, but people were almost putting this man out to pasture. And he's bounced back by scoring a lovely goal against Tottenham, as we saw, and he was, again, what can you say? He was exceptional today. It wasn't just his goals, it was his all-round play, link-up play, his assists today. But the fact that he finished them off with a couple himself was brilliant.
And so many reasons for Liverpool fans to be optimistic today. As you said, it's not the best performance of the season, but they scored 7 goals. They only had 8 shots on target, but they scored 7 goals. They were 3-0 up at half-time, and clearly in that dressing room, nobody is of the mindset of taking our foot off the gas. And I even loved Jordan Henderson coming out afterwards, and the first thing he talks about is being sloppy. We're looking at the mentality of winners here.
Yes, and that was the one thing that impressed me today, their second half performance. It's very easy to come out when you're 3-0 up and you're cruising, just to coast through the game and play almost at half pace. Liverpool were the opposite. It was as if Liverpool were the team that got told off at half-time. It was as if Liverpool were the team that had to respond. Should have been Palace, but it was Liverpool who came out. And from the first minute, I can't even remember Palace threatening in the second half. I remember them threatening a lot in the first half. But when the game was effectively over, it was Liverpool with just foot to the metal all the time, right to the 90th minute. Mane off, Salah on, let's go again. Curtis Jones on, let's go again. And they push forward and forward and forward.
And I wonder whether all the conversations we've sort of had played out in public, whether it's about these 12:30 kickoffs, whether it's about the 5 subs rule, whether it's about the relentless fixture list and player welfare, you get the impression that Jurgen is creating this kind of backs to the wall, everyone's against us mentality in that dressing room.
It's tried and tested. Managers have used it throughout the years. Mourinho's used it, Ferguson, this sort of siege mentality. And I think what he's done, Jurgen in particular, is he's used that. I mean, he's understood it's under the cosh in terms of personnel because he's lacking on centre halves. Fabinho's gone in and done a reasonable job. The young lads come in and played well next to him. He's got, you know, midfield. Who's their best free midfielders? We don't know. But he's used it in the galvanised club. It's interesting what you said about Jordan because we could hear him driving the team.
Yeah.
5-6-0 up, and he's telling people,
He said it, didn't he? He said if he heard what I was saying today.
And I think it's fantastic. And he is the icon. I don't know the right word, but he epitomises what it is to be a Liverpool footballer in this modern team because there's no superstars. They're just a great unit, great side. And
there's no let up from him at all, is there?
No.
5-0 up. If anybody gives a bad pass away, he's barking at them. Yeah. He's shouting at them to get back to run when you don't necessarily need to run because it's too easy. You're going to win the game. He was still shouting and screaming. It was for us here. I mean, we've got an elevator position, a wonderful position here. It's great to see. Great to see, great to hear the instructions that he's shouting at the players, whether it's Mo Salah, whether it's, you know, Curtis Jones, who's a young player coming into the squad. It's the same orders at everybody, and it's quite refreshing, actually. Yeah.
He didn't shout too much at the fullbacks, though, today. I mean, they were once again incredible. Their value to this team is just shown week after week, isn't it?
And me and Maka were talking, like, we can't really call them fullbacks. I don't know what they are. They're like, they take up the whole side of the pitch at all times. You know, the quality on the ball, the way they pick passes, look at that. That is... Well, that didn't work, that one. But yeah.
Who showed that one?
Yeah. I don't know who picked out the lads, but listen, they defend, they attack, they get forward. Two great personalities as well. I particularly enjoyed, they're both talkers on the pitch, particularly Robertson on that side, but they just give Liverpool such thrust down the sides, such quality in attack. It's hard to call them fullbacks. I don't know. They're the modern day attacking wide wing backs, whatever they are, but they're both fantastic and everything goes through them.
And what happens is that when one of them is injured, like we've seen recently with James Milner having to play left, or Simicast playing that, or Neco Williams on the right, the starting position of Robertson and Trent Alexander is 10 yards further forward, so they offer so much more going forward. That's the thing. They gamble because they know they're quick enough and intelligent enough that if they do lose the ball, they can get back. So they're always playing a little bit of chicken and egg with the left midfielder of the opposition team. And normally, because Liverpool dominate possession, they're normally further forward and push the midfielders back. So it's a great asset to have. And the delivery is another thing, isn't it?
And here's a good one for you. Since the start of the 18-19 season, 26% of their assists have come from those two. So it's amazing, isn't it? You can see there the Palace players just warming down out there. I mean, you do have to spare a thought for them. Football is a ruthless business, but that is a horrible position to be in. I don't know whether you were ever on the end of anything similar to that.
Oh yeah, that's a horrible dressing room to be in. The fact that they've only just come out for their warm down now suggests to me that they've been getting a dressing down. I thought Roy on the bench, or when the 5th, 6th and 7th goal, when he sort of resigned himself, there was a smile, but he would be seething with that performance because there's some good characters in that Crystal Palace side, but there was a moment today, and I find this the toughest part of my job because when you're questioning character of players, listen, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, they could do the right things, be good professionals, but there was a spell in that game, 30, 40 minutes, where part of that team, I felt down tools. They didn't do it right. So Roy's got a job of picking them up for whatever reason. There's a lot of good characters in that team, but that spell, Mac, we're watching them. It wasn't getting.
I think individually, Joe, if they go into the dressing room and look at themselves and say, "Did I put it in today?"
Yeah.
Because I felt exactly the same as you. They played the second half when it got to 4 and 5 as individuals.
Yeah.
They were looking at each other to close down. There was lots of arms waving if they didn't receive the ball. There was lots of, well, why do we need to run back there? It doesn't matter anymore, and pointing fingers at each other. And that is a disappointing part, because when they played against Tottenham here a couple of weeks ago, they were fighting for themselves. Everybody was hanging on together. They were, fighting for their cause. They were throwing themselves in front of everything. None of that today. And that's a worrying part, isn't it, really, for Roy?
And you have to give them a squeeze, because, not a squeeze, listen, let them know where the standards are. Yeah. But there was certainly a 30, 35-minute spell which wasn't acceptable as a professional footballer to do that on the pitch, and Roy's got to address that.
Well, let's see what the players think as well, because we've got other substitutes just